Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean, coming to you on another holiday weekend. On this episode, we've got the Hawks finally being able to go golfing, odd social mediaing from a fan favorite, and running roughshod on a attempted blockade in Milwaukee. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. The season is winding down, so head on over to icehogs.com. Get a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Oh, Alex, I didn't think there was going to be that much to talk about, and then I started taking some notes, and I was like, man, we got a lot to talk about.
You know, it's funny. I literally told myself the same thing because I thought going into this, it's like, okay, we're already into the baseball season. Everything's wrapping up. But yeah, there is a lot to talk about.
I kind of want to get the Bears out of the way, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, that's fine.
I was like, okay, there's not going to be much Bears news because it's we're a couple weeks from the draft. So that means usually trades are in limbo, and most pro days are over, and the big bulk of free agency is done. So usually this is a pretty slow time for the NFL. But then the Saints go and offer Cam Meredith a 2-year, just shy of $10 million offer sheet. So now the Bears have until Wednesday to match that offer, or they lose him with no compensation.
I have a feeling that if they really want him back, they're going to match that offer. I'm not really losing any sleep over it because I do feel like that they will bring him back. I feel like they do value him, and I think that he's proven to have some value, and I don't think that we can be worried about their financial situation. Really, they still have cap room. So I just, in my opinion, I feel like it's just a matter of when they counter that offer.
I feel the same way. I feel, though, like the Bears were hoping it was going to be like a 3-year, $13 million contract rather than a 2-year, $10 million contract.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. And it's a little different than the Kyle Fuller thing because, Kyle Fuller was kind of more of a, I guess, important piece considering who's on the wide receiver staff now. And I also feel like with the way the Packers went about it, it just worked in the Bears' favor. It's still manageable for the Bears now, but like you said, it probably wasn't exactly what they expected.
Yeah, I just the shortness of it. I think that the 2 years as opposed to a 3-year deal probably is catching the Bears off guard a little bit. And I don't know the rules of this, but I wonder if the Bears are allowed to then renegotiate before they sign their match the offer sheet to see if they can do something and use that as the framework. 2-year, $10 million, and try to wrap him up for 3 years at least, like 3-year, 15.
Yeah.
I think it's the 3 years that they would like to get under their belt. And I really do feel the Bears are going to bring him back. I think it's a little more than they were expecting, not by leaps and bounds, but I think they were imagining he was going to go for probably 3.5 instead of 5. And that $1.5 million a year for how much they have in salary cap still available is pretty much a drop in the bucket. But honestly, is even though they've bolstered that wide receiver core, is if they don't match this offer sheet, then they're sort of either painting themselves in the corner of having to draft a wide receiver fairly high that they're going to have to rely on from the get-go, because they don't have a starter opposite on the other outside spot. Is Taylor Gabriel is going to be a Z receiver, so they need another outside receiver, and I think everyone was assuming that Cam Meredith was going to be that other starter on the outside. So they would either have to draft somebody high or roll the dice and think Kevin White is going to finally be able to handle that.
Yeah, and I think at this point, not sure they really want to take that risk. So I do feel like they will do what they need to do to bring him back. Hopefully that they can do it sooner than later, but they have till Wednesday, so 3 more days from when we're recording this Sunday night. It would be nice to see Monday, Tuesday, or even at the deadline, just get it done, because I really don't think that Ryan Pace is just going to turn his back on Cam Meredith for the reasons you just said, because he is still valuable. He does still fit in here. It's not like they made great wide receiver moves and they got 2 talented guys, but you still want as many guys that you can trust as possible. And despite the injury last year, I think it's safe to say that Ryan Pace has a lot of trust in Cam Meredith's abilities based on what he's shown before.
Absolutely. I think that's fully true. Is Cam Meredith like a legit number 1 in this league? Absolutely not. But he's also not about to get paid like a number 1. He's getting paid like a number 3. That's
right.
That's something you have to consider in there as well. And I know that he's coming off of an injury, but I think of anybody, the Bears are in the best shape out of any team to evaluate what that injury status is, because he's in-house, being evaluated regularly by their doctors. So they know, they see him, they know what's going on, how to best evaluate the knee. And that knee injury happened really early. So he should be back in training camp and doing full team activities without any limitations. Unlike some other players that got hurt much, much later in the season that are, they're going to be on the PUP list to start the season.
Yeah, exactly. Because you remember that when he got hurt in that, week? It was either week 2 or 3 of the preseason, and you got updates right away on what he was doing. Because you remember, they said that they expected him to be back in training camp by this year, almost immediately. So they were evaluating him very, very closely from the get-go. They know exactly what kind of shape he's in.
Yeah, and it's funny about the situation is when the Bears decided to place the transition tag on Fuller and then the original round tender on Cam Meredith, there was a lot of national media people that were just ripping Ryan Pace apart and talking about how dumb that was and how the Bears are going to pay for that and it's going to cost them. And really, I think it's proven that Ryan Pace was way out in front of the curve on this. That was absolutely brilliant moves. Is you dangled them out there knowing that you had this fail safe that you could just match it if you wanted to, and you let the league set the price. So you're not overpaying for a guy and you're not lowballing. And so that way that guy is not going to feel like he's lowballed because he saw what the market was based on everybody else. And it wasn't that he had a high tender on him where a team didn't want to give up draft compensation for them. There was no draft compensation. Teams were free to just sign him. Both guys. So both guys found what their value was, and the Bears are just going to be able to match. No negotiations. There you go. You negotiated with somebody else. Somebody else did the dirty work for us. I think it's just absolutely genius, and I don't know how long that this trick will be able to work, because others are, once the NFL sees something works, everybody starts jumping on it and doing it themselves.
Well, to me, it was not only smart, but it was really good that they took advantage of their situation, because they were in the situation where they had so much cap room that was such a doable thing. It's not like, oh, the Packers offered him this amount of money, they can't pay that because they have no cap room. No, the Bears had so much cap room, and to me, that's just flat out taking advantage of your situation. When you have a bunch of cap room, you're not just going to go out there and spend willy-nilly. You want to spend smartly, and by spending smartly is doing what he did with those tags. It all worked out so well with that.
Yeah, because there's, last year everyone was like, oh, they were bidding against themselves to get Mike Glennon, and this year, no, you can't argue that. They didn't bid against anybody. The league set the price, they just matched it, and that was really smart. And I'm starting to think that Ryan Pace it took him a while to figure out everything he needed. I mean, I know he came in there as a good evaluator of talent, but I think he's finally starting to figure out the ins and outs of being a very good general manager.
Yeah, and I think part of it all is that, remember, it took him time to really kind of weed out the bad that was in this organization that he took over. Just remember how awful this organization was when he came in. He had a huge mess to clean up. And I think that once he kind of cleared that out, he realized, okay, now we have all this cap space. Now we're really building through the draft. Now we got to fill some holes via free agency. And I know the free agency in the past for Ryan Pace has not worked out. But after clearing out a bunch of the old crap and kind of reevaluating free agency, because, I mean, Mike Glennon was a flop. Other guys were flops because of injury. It just seems like he's being much smarter without trying to be, what's the word for it? Like too risky. Like he isn't kind of being like, oh, I'm going to take all these chances. He's being smart with things. Part of it was experience, getting the experience over a year, but part of it was just, like I said, taking advantage of the situation. You're not always going to have a situation where you have a bunch of cap room. A few years ago, he was tied up with a bunch of bad players taking up a lot of space. So, it goes to show that situations of a franchise, they got to be taken advantage of at the right times, or else it's not going to work. You can have teams that just go out and spend willy-nilly just because they're a flashy name, but maybe they don't fit your system, maybe they're overaged, or maybe you're not paying them to the right market price. In this situation, Ryan Pace is paying these guys at market value and is getting better deals than some of these guys might get if teams didn't do that kind of thing.
And I know I've gotten some comments from people on Twitter about Ryan Pace's draft record. And honestly, his draft record's pretty good. His first draft was the suspect one. And we have to kind of put that in a context. And I'm not trying to be a Ryan Pace apologist, is because you definitely have to put that first draft on his record, but you have to sort of put it into context. Is he had just been hired, and there was only a couple of months between the time he was hired and the time that the draft happened. So he didn't have his full evaluation time like he did the next year and the year after that. Also, he was not working with all of his own people in the draft department. If you remember, that next season, he let go a lot of the scouting department and brought in his own people.
Yes.
So he didn't have his own people. He had people that were with the old regime, which was terrible, and didn't have the time he normally picked. And the guy he picked first was the consensus guy that everyone said that the Bears should pick. So it's not like they went out on a limb and drafted somebody. They took the guy that everybody in the world was expecting them to take.
Yeah, exactly.
So it, not terrible. Like things just didn't happen the way that they had hoped, but the subsequent drafts have been pretty darn good. I mean, would you like Leonard Floyd to have been healthier and have some more sacks? Yes. but also he's being dropped into coverage awful lot. So, but when he's healthy, you look at him, he's very good. Mitch Trubisky, you're mortgaging your whole future on this guy. So there's definitely been some hits there. Now it's, what are we going to do this year when we have not a top 5 pick, we got a number 8 pick. I think we're all just hoping that quarterbacks, there's going to be the top 3 or 4 of the top 5 picks are quarterbacks. I think all Bears fans are rooting for that.
Yeah, for sure. That way that there's a lot more available that they need. Or, I mean, let's face it, in a draft, you want to take the best guy possible in the position they're at. But obviously, Trubisky is the guy for the future when it comes to quarterback. So there'd be plenty of other guys in different positions available if the quarterbacks just kept going. And I mean, right now, you have to think there's got to be a lot of quarterbacks going right away. We talked about this before. It would be stupid for the Browns not to get a quarterback, for the Giants not to get a quarterback, for the Jets not to get a quarterback. So you got to figure at least 3 will be taken before the Bears.
I mean, I think Cleveland would be stupid to not, even if they value somebody higher than a quarterback, I think they're silly to not take quarterback number 1, because then they get their choice. They don't have to settle on somebody else. They get to choose the guy they want. And then whatever position player they had ranked the highest, chances are very good that they'll get that player as well.
Yeah.
People are trying to, I mean, I guess there's a chance that Chubb goes to the Giants. I was struggling with that one. Going to the Giants, but he looks much more like a 4-3 guy, and I don't know if he's going to fit in that Giants system that they're going to switch to, but who knows? Maybe they take him. Maybe they take Barkley, but still, like, if number 3, the Jets traded up to get a quarterback. You didn't trade up to get a position player. You don't trade up that high to get a position player unless it's like a Julius Peppers. And so that means that either Saquon Barkley or Chubb or both are going to be there at 4. And so you just sit back and you take the quarterback you want, and then you get the position player you most likely want. It's smart drafting for the Browns to go quarterback first, even if it's not your number 1 choice.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, then again, this is the Browns we're talking about, so who the hell knows, right?
That's true. But while we're talking about the draft I got a couple people that were asking me if Saquon Barkley somehow falls to number 8, which I don't think will happen, but if he did, do the Bears draft him?
I would think so. I mean, he seems like such a can't miss guy. And there's, all this talk about how Jordan Howard doesn't fit Matt Nagy's system. So I feel like if he was available, it would almost be a no-brainer, right? I mean, does that make sense?
Here's my thoughts on it. Is taking a running back when you have a very good running back, perennial 1,000-yard rusher on your team, to draft a running back at number 8 when you were terrible last year feels like a luxury. And I get overall he probably is going to be a much better fit for what the Bears want to do and is going to ease the burden for Mitch Trubisky. But I feel like that is definitely not something you would pull the trigger on unless before you make that pick, you're able to trade Jordan Howard for at least a second rounder.
Right.
Otherwise, I just feel like that is a luxury that you don't have, because I feel the same way about Quentin Nelson. Quentin Nelson seems like a can't miss kind of guy. And, granted, we've talked about like can't miss offensive line draft picks like Tony Mandarich that missed. But here's what I point at is the Bears did a good job of masking most of the holes on their roster, who rushes the quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that people have been talking about since really before the offseason. It's funny. You talked about Quentin Nelson, and he's on the mock draft of a lot of people. And there seems to be a disagreement with that. I think the reason why he's on a lot of mock drafts is because it seems like the easy fit. You're like, okay, you're trying to build your franchise around this quarterback. Why wouldn't you take a guy who's going to protect him since he's the most valuable person on your team? Though it's just, there's no certainties because there's so many different directions the Bears could go. You mentioned guys who can rush the quarterback. That's a pretty important thing as well. We've talked about secondary. We talked about the linebacking core. There are just so many different options. And I don't think, like we talked about before, if they are staying at number 8, not trading anywhere, if they're staying at number 8 in the draft, they're not going to be reaching. They're going to be taking for best available, and that could be a number of guys.
Yeah, I mean, as good as Quentin Nelson is, I feel like that's a piece for a team that I feel like that's another luxury for the Bears. I actually didn't do this exercise, and I wish I would have now. But if you go to the Pro Bowl guards, how many of them are first-round picks? I would imagine most of them are like third, fourth-round picks.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I mean, there's a lot available.
Yeah, I mean, when you draft like best player available, I think it's a little more nuanced than you just rank them and then, like an auto draft in your fantasy football pool, and you just go, this is the best guy I have available still. I think it's a little more nuanced than that. If you think about it, is all right, well, if Sam Darnold is the best player available in the Bears draft, the Bears aren't drafting Sam Darnold because they have Mitch Trubisky. So it's a best player available, but doesn't make sense. And then you also have to evaluate, all right, if Quentin Nelson is the far and away the best guard we have ranked on our board, who's next? Like, how far above the second or third or fourth guard do we have him ranked? And where do we feel those other guards are going? If we feel like the second and third, probably not, the second one's probably going to go late first, early second. But the third best guard in the draft is, if we feel like he's going to go in the third round, then what separation is there? And is it better to get the third best guard that's not that much behind the best guard in the third round, and then get somebody that's far and away the better pass rusher in the first round? So it's you have to do this kind of evaluations. And my thinking is, right now, your pass rushers on the outside are Leonard Floyd, Isaiah Irving, Aaron Lynch, and Sam Acho.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I love Leonard Floyd, but you don't know what he's going to be like health-wise. And Sam Acho's, he's there, but you don't really have a lot of guys that you can really say are elite in that department. Like I said, probably the most elite would be Leonard Floyd, but he's got to be healthy.
And pass rusher is not that deep in this draft.
No,
so you have to take that into evaluate in your evaluation. So I just feel like, with you got Jordan Howard in the 5th round, is Saquon Barkley going to be so much better that you're going to bypass pass rushers or playmaking safeties or elite cornerback? I just feel like that's a luxury. And I think when people mock Quentin Nelson to the Bears, I feel like that's just a lazy thing. They're like, well, his position coach at Notre Dame is now with the Bears, so it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's easy to say, oh, they need a guard for Mitchell Trubisky. Of course, they need to revamp their line, but you talked about guards selected, Pro Bowl guards. This is just one example out of millions, but Josh Sitton, 4-time Pro Bowler. He was a 4th round pick in 2008. I mean, there's plenty of guards that can be efficient. And you don't, in my opinion, you don't need the best of the best when it comes to having a guard. As long as they do an efficient job, that's really what you can ask for. Do you see Tom Brady filled with Pro Bowl guards these days? Do you see Drew Brees filled with Pro Bowl guards? Do you look at a Super Bowl champ and just say, wow, they took the best Pro Bowl guard and, that won them the Super Bowl? It's a position to me where as long as you're efficient, obviously it makes a difference if you're bad, but if you're efficient enough, I don't think you have to just go and reach for a guard in a high slot when there are other positions where you need to draft elite guys. Would I protest if they got Quentin Nelson? No, of course not, because it is an important position, but you don't need to have the best of the best to succeed. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah, just looking up is real quickly is Larry Allen, who's arguably the best guard that's ever played in the NFL, was a 2nd rounder.
Yeah.
So that these guys are draftable in later rounds. Is Quentin Nelson going to be better than Larry Allen? Even if he has an amazing career, it's hard to believe that he would be better than Larry Allen.
That's hard to beat. Yeah, that's very hard to beat.
So there's guys out there. I'm looking at Andrew Norwell, who was the All-Pro guard last year for the All-Pro. He was where was he drafted? He went undrafted. He was the best guard in football last year as voted by the NFL, and he was not drafted.
Yeah, I mean, you can find efficient linemen anywhere. You really can. I mean, the nice thing about football is that in a draft, you can find efficient playmakers in many different areas in different spots. It's not like the NBA where after like the first 15 picks, it's like, well, okay, these guys are, not going to be stellar, or they'll be good position guys, but they're not going to be your superstars. But in the NFL, you can find stars on all levels. Look at Jordan Howard. Look how late he was drafted. There are several guys you can look and say, hey, these were drafted 3rd, 4th rounds, but they're playing at elite levels.
Tom Brady was a 6th rounder.
I was going to use that example, but I think everyone's tired of hearing about that.
They probably are, but I think it just really lends to this. That's my point is Quentin Nelson. I've watched the game film on him. He looks really good. There's no flaws in his game. He's going to step in somewhere and just be a day one starter. But it's one of those things is a guard really, you really got to evaluate position by position, because if the best kicker in the history of football is coming in the draft, are you going to draft him with the 8th pick? Be like, well, he's a future Hall of Famer and you need a kicker. No, you're not going to draft the kicker at the 8th spot.
Right. Exactly.
I know the Raiders drafted a kicker in the 1st round, but it's is a guard more important than a pass rusher, especially when you have a Pro Bowl guard, albeit he's coming off of injury, but the reports are that he's going to have no limitations and he's going to come in healthy to the training camp. And Eric Kush, when he did play before the injury, played at a very high level. So I think you're okay there. And I think how much are you upgrading there? I think that's part of your evaluation process too, is who's the best player, what's your position, and how much is he going to upgrade that position? If Josh Sitton was still here and you had Josh Sitton, who was probably the 2nd or 3rd best guard in free agency this year, and you had a Pro Bowler in Kyle Long, and he's both of those guys are still playing at a decent level. Is drafting Quentin Nelson going to go that much higher? Same with Saquon Barkley. Is you're like, well, he's a better pass catcher, blah, blah, blah. But, Jordan Howard that's probably the one thing he doesn't do well is catch passes. Right. But you got Tariq Cohen, and he's pretty darn good at catching passes.
And you have Benny Cunningham. They brought him back, and I think that was a smart move on the Bears' part.
And he's pretty darn good at catching passes too. So I think he
has more receiving yards than rushing yards in his career.
Probably. So there's workarounds there, but if you were to bring in, if somehow Bradley Chubb falls to you, is how much of an upgrade is he over Sam Acho? A lot. He's a big upgrade over that, as opposed to, modest upgrade over Jordan Howard or modest upgrade over Kyle Long.
No, I mean, that's a good point. It really is a good point. And I understand that there are probably a lot of people who have that same feeling that you do. Like, let's face it, there are a lot of people that see the same way. Me, it's like, it's just a little tougher to think like, yeah, your points are all right. As in they are all right. Like, I can't disagree with any of that, but it is also, I think, hard at times to like pass up on can't miss talent like that. So that's why I kind of see both sides of it, because let's face it, Barkley looks like he's going to be a generational talent. But
I mean, don't get me wrong. If they draft Saquon Barkley, I'm going to probably own a Saquon Barkley jersey within a week. But it also, if I'm Ryan Pace and he's there, I probably don't pick him. I probably try to trade back, but I don't pick him. I probably go, one of the pass rushers, one of the linebackers. I feel like that's a much more position of, and I hate drafting position of need, but I feel like the value is better there because the pass rushers are not deep in this draft, and running backs always deep, and linemen are usually pretty deep, but pass rusher not deep. So get your value now.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. But hey, I don't think Saquon Barkley is going to drop to number 8, so that's why I'm probably not even going to put much thought into it.
Oh, I don't think he gets past 4, honestly.
Yeah, I don't either.
And I honestly, I hope Quentin Nelson goes before the Bears pick, because although I think he's going to be very good, I think there's also some other really good guards that are in this draft. And if you think about it, is as a fan, you kind of want fireworks with that first round pick. And I don't want us to turn into Jets fans. If you think about the draft, whenever the Jets fans draft, whenever the Jets draft, the fans, they pan into them and they all have their hands on their head and they're like, what? Why? Whoa.
And you saw some of that last year too with the Trubisky thing.
Everyone was assuming that, we were getting Solomon Thomas, and then they traded up and they're like, we traded up for Solomon Thomas? And then they're like, Mitchell Trubisky. And everyone was like, what? Same with when they traded up for Leonard Floyd. Fans were very skeptical about Leonard Floyd, and they traded up to get him. And so it would be nice for the Bears to draft somebody that they feel is going to be awesome, and that the fans go, yes, just universally go, yes.
Yeah, or at least say, okay, I can dig it. A nice yes would be great, but and I can dig it would be good too. Either way, I just don't want to go through another, oh my gosh, hands on heads type scenario again.
And just because Bears fans go, Bears should be drafting this guy, and I'm mad that they don't, is a very recent version was when the Bears passed on Danny Shelton in the first round. And I was very vocal saying, you don't want Danny Shelton. I don't think he's very good. You can, in the second round, probably get a guy that's much better, like Eddie Goldman. and the Bears got Eddie Goldman, and Danny Shelton was just traded from the Browns to the Patriots for, I think, a conditional 6th round pick. So there's that. So,
Well, when you go to the Patriots, so he'll at least get a Super Bowl ring, probably.
but you just, the fans aren't always right, but I hope that it's a player that at least everybody's just excited when they come rather than being scratching their heads.
Absolutely.
The last thing I want to discuss with the Bears, I don't know if you had anything else, but the last thing I want to discuss was Jordan Howard deleted all Bears content from his Instagram account.
Yeah, that was a little strange.
But
lot of speculation.
But all right, so I usually do not read the comments on anything because it's 2018.
As you should.
And I read the comments on it, and somebody was like, yeah, it's crazy. I can't believe he deleted his Instagram account or Bears content on his Instagram account. And somebody's like, you guys are all idiots, and posted a screen capture. And is like, see, Bear stuff all over the place. And somebody was like, that's Twitter. I was like, all right, I'm fine with this comment, but it was somebody being smarter than thou and being 100% wrong. But anyway, Jordan Howard deleted.
That's what you get when you read the comments.
Yeah, I know. But Jordan Howard definitely deleted his Bears content on Instagram, which leads you to believe that he either feels like or has insider information that he's on the trading block.
But here's what I asked. Like, even if you were being traded, why would you delete that stuff? I know there are plenty of other players that have been traded to other teams, but they're not deleting the stuff from their old team. I don't know. At first I thought, oh, maybe something is up. But when I thought about it more, I'm like, that just seemed weird to me.
Yeah, and the Bears definitely came out and said that they don't intend on trading him, which doesn't really mean anything. Because I believe they also said that after trading up for Leonard Floyd, they weren't planning to trade up in last year's draft. And we all saw how that went. And this is the lying season in the NFL.
Right.
But I just don't see him being traded as a smart value move.
Right, that's the thing. I mean, I know there is the whole argument about not fitting in the system, and I love Jordan Howard. I just got a Jordan Howard jersey. I think he's such a good power back, but I get where people are getting at with that because Matt Nagy is a pass-first guy and Jordan Howard has trouble catching. But like you said, do you really want to give up a talent like that and get way undervalue? It would seem very, very risky, especially if you didn't necessarily have a plan for replacement.
It goes back to, I feel like if your system can't find a way to incorporate a top talent in football, then maybe your system needs improvement. It goes back to when the Bears, they traded Greg Olsen because he didn't fit into Mike Martz's system. And how stupid was that?
And I'm still pissed about that trade. I'm still pissed about it.
Number one, they didn't get good value. Number two is they traded away a guy who's just had an amazing career afterwards, and you got nothing for it, and your offense stunk anyway. So it was this. If your system can't find a way to incorporate a talented player, then your system sucks. Okay, there we go. So I don't know if you had any more Bears topics.
No, not really. Not that much to talk about.
No, just a few things popped up here that wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk baseball or do you want to get... I don't even want to talk Bulls.
No, I really don't either.
Or did you want to get the Hawk stuff out of the way?
Up to you.
let's just get the Hawk stuff out of the way. And
Okay.
we can wrap this up on baseball.
Wrap it up on a good note. Yeah, I agree.
So the Hawks season is officially over. Was mathematically they were eliminated from the playoffs a couple weeks ago, but it's over. It's official. They are not in the playoffs, and Patrick Sharp retired.
Yeah, that was a nice little thing they did for Patrick Sharp after their last home game. Let him skate around. They gave him a nice tribute video. There's a lot to be thankful for Patrick Sharp because he was really a key cog in those 3 Stanley Cup victories. He was such a good player for many years. It was amazing that they got him from the Flyers back in, what was it, like 06 or 05 or something. Literally got him for like a bag of pucks and some Subway coupons. But you know what? What he did in a Hawks uniform will never be forgotten. He was, in my opinion, the most entertaining guy to watch when it came to just winding up a shot. You have finesse guys like Patrick Kane. You have just pure skill with Marian Hossa. But when you have a guy that's going to just tee it up and blast one, it was so fun watching Patrick Sharp do that over the years. You look at his career numbers in Chicago, 249 goals, 532 points total, 749 games. I'm going to miss him, but yeah, it was definitely time for him to call it quits. 36 years old, battling injuries the past few years. Give him credit for playing in 70 games this year, but you definitely saw that he was not the same player that he was in his prime.
And the fact that the Blackhawks were bad is part of the reason that he played 70 games.
Yeah, that's true.
But it got me thinking once he announced he was retired. And I don't think I heard, I don't know if he announced it before that last home game or if that was kind of the thing where he did it then. But I was out and I saw when it was over, he just did the skate around. I was like, oh man, Sharpie's retiring. I just realized that the volume was off and I just saw it and I was like, Sharpie's retiring.
Yeah, it wasn't really built up much, probably just because it was such a lost season.
But it got me thinking, is if you had to rank make a top 5 most important players during these 3 cup runs for the Blackhawks, does Sharp make it?
You said top 5?
Yes.
That is tough because Kane and Tays are the top 2. And then I feel like you got to put Duncan Keith on that list. I feel like you got to put Hossa. You got to put Hossa on that list. I feel like, I
feel like the last 3, it's between Brent Seabrook, Patrick Sharp, and Corey Crawford.
I agree. Those are the exact.
Which Crawford? You'd have to put. I think you'd have to put Crawford, but if he was there for all 3, but he was only there, he was only the goalie for 2 of them.
I know he wasn't there for the first one, but you also got to remember that he was so key when they won their last cup. Corey Crawford, they wouldn't have a dynasty without Corey Crawford. But yeah, I think you could definitely say that between those 3, it's really close. But I think it's even particularly close between Seabrook and Sharp. Because, Sharp was the sharpshooter, the scorer. Seabrook was not only a big defenseman, but he scored some of the biggest overtime goals during those runs, including the one against Detroit in Game 7, the Game 3 against the Predators in 2015. And heck, remember, a lot of people forget, he scored a very important OT winner in the Cup Finals in 2013 in Game 4. He doesn't score that and the Blackhawks don't win. They're down 3-1 in that series. And I don't know if they win that series if they were down 3-1 again.
And Sharpie, I believe he got the assist on the series-winning Kane goal against the Flyers.
He did. And what's funny? If you go back and watch that clip of Kane celebrating, Sharp knew it was in too. He reacted right away. Everyone else was
those were the only 2 people in the entire world that knew that puck went in.
It was
the announcers didn't know, camera didn't know. the players on either team, nobody knew, but it did.
It was Kane and Sharp.
I still remember my reaction is I had to work that night, and I lived literally like a half a block from where my work was, like half a block from where I lived. So as soon as I clocked out, I sprinted to my house, went up the stairs, turned on the TV. I had actually left the TV on with the channel on, so I didn't miss anything or try to fumble to. And I got there towards the end of the game, and when that shot went in, I froze and paused, and I was like, "Did that go in? Did that go in? What happened? And I'm like, why is Kane jumping up and down? Did they go in?" And I'm like, I'm not counting that in until the referees say that was in. And then once it was announced, I just like dropped my knees with tears coming out of my eyes. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, that was just so anticlimactic because when the shot was made, I just thought like, oh man, he made the save. And then I saw Kane and Sharp heading for the corner. So I thought maybe it deflected back into the corner, and then everyone stopped moving. And then the camera panned out, and Kane starts throwing his gloves up. I'm like, what? They won? Wait, what? And you see Antti Niemi just standing there. He's like, why you coming? Go light, not go on. He's just like, what's going on? Kane is skating towards him like he's being attacked by a swarm of bees waving his arms. And then they showed the overhead and it was clearly in. That was so weird.
Yeah, it was definitely anticlimactic, then super climactic, but it was amazing. But going back to this season, it was announced that Quenneville and Bowman are coming back.
Yeah. So here's my thoughts on that. Okay, this is the first time during the Bowman reign as general manager and Coach Quenneville reign as coach that they missed the playoffs. A lot of people think it could just be a blip in the radar. Some people think differently. Okay, so you're giving them another chance. It's hard to let go of guys that were helping of bringing much success to the team, including 3 Stanley Cups this decade. So, okay, you're going to do that. I can see why. But I feel like if we have another season like next year and we don't make it back to the playoffs, I think then you gotta make changes across the board. I think that their ice should be thin. I get bringing them back. I'm okay with them coming back, but no more excuses next year. It's got to get better or it's got to change.
I see that point of view, but my thinking is last year it was made very clear that nobody was happy. Rocky wasn't happy. John McDonough wasn't happy. Bowman wasn't happy. Quenneville wasn't happy.
Clearly,
the players weren't happy. None of them were happy, and they vowed to not make this happen again. And then they got infinitely worse. So what's the rationale for not axing somebody? I mean, my thinking is this: somebody needed to go. Whether it was you felt that Bowman had the team handcuffed with salary cap issues and was not bringing in enough young talent, or if the game had passed Quenneville by, whatever your valuation, I felt like somebody, at least one of them, needed to go. And since both were retained, I just feel like you had to have a very, very, very clear path of what you're doing for next year and how you were going to get better. And you had to do this plan. And part one couldn't be, well, we know Corey Crawford's coming back healthy. your plan should be able to work whether or not Corey Crawford comes back.
Right, and they feel very confident from what it sounds like that he is going to be back, because let's face it, that was probably the number one question concerning next year is he going to come back? No doubt that it was something that is on everybody's mind. It's on my mind. I know it's on your mind. It's essential. The goaltending this year was just flat awful. It was guys that were not NHL goaltenders. They were minor league guys. And unfortunately, they were just kind of left out to dry there, and you knew that it really wasn't going to get any better. And Corey Crawford proved that he was the MVP of the team when he was healthy. Now, the other thing that I have to ask myself is, I feel like there is a plan, but do they feel like that with this plan, they will be able to truly bring them back to contention next year? They say that, but is that really going to be the case here? Because think about it. You got a lot of young guys with some promise. You got Dylan Sakura. You got Alex DeBrincat, who I think is going to be an absolute stud. You have guys like Nick Schmaltz, and you're still going to have Kane and Taze and Saad and those guys. Do they think that the combination of the youth movement with some veteran guys is going to be able to turn it around right away? I don't know what their window is right now. I don't know if they think that their window is going to be right off the bat again, like they're going to get right back into it. I don't know exactly what their timetable is, I should say. That's what I would like to know, and that's, I think, an answer we're only going to get as time moves on. We'll see what they do in the draft. We'll see what they do in the offseason. We'll see what moves they make, and we'll see the results next year. But I just feel like no matter what the plan is, you got to expect more from a team that still has enough veteran guys to be here intending for a playoff run.
I think one of the questions that needs to be answered is, who is your competent backup to Corey Crawford in case something happens again? Is Corey Crawford missed a lot of time this year, and the Blackhawks were actually competitive. I think they were 16-9 in games he started.
They were in a playoff spot.
Yeah, and then they just fell to one of the worst records in hockey when he was hurt. Last year he missed a bunch of time. I think the year before he missed a bunch of time. So it's inevitable he's going to miss time. And who's your competent backup? I think we saw a very large sample size for both Forsberg and Berube.
They're not the answer.
And I'm fairly confident that nobody that watched those games felt that either one was the answer. Jeff Glass is 200 years old, and he's not the answer either. And Delia we didn't see enough of him to know what he was.
I don't really want to go into next year trusting Delia. I mean, he may turn into something, but I think you got to make a move for next year. I'm looking at free agents right now when it comes to goaltenders. There are some interesting options out there. Jonathan Bernier is one that I wouldn't mind them exploring a little bit. Andrew Hammond, if he's healthy. I mean, I don't know. We only played 2 games this year, but I don't know if you would trust that or not. Anton Hudobin, he might be an option. I don't know if you want. I mean, Carter Hutton was good this year, but I don't know if you're going to bring him back or not. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But my point is, you're going to have to get somebody. There is nobody in the pipeline right now that is going to step up and do it, because nobody has shown the ability right now. JF Berube, like you said, no Jeff Glass. I mean, does what's his face, the beer league guy, want to do it? I'm just kidding.
I mean, one interesting name that I thought about. Well, actually, it was when the accountant was the day after the accountant went in and had to play. I forgot who
Yeah.
it was. It was a former NHL goalie was lobbying the Blackhawks to sign him, and I can't remember who it was, but it was kind of funny. God, who was it? I'll think of it in a minute. But when you have former goalies lobbying to be your current goalie, because they would actually be a better option than a guy that just came off the street from a beer league. That's sad.
Yeah.
But one name I actually thought about that was a former Blackhawk goalie, left in free agency, and has been a disappointment to his new team. Can you guess who that is?
Antti Niemi?
No. More recent.
Oh, Antti Ranta.
Scott Darling.
Oh, okay. Is he a free agent?
No.
I didn't
But
think so.
he signed a deal. They're not happy with it, with what he's given them. I wonder if you could bring him back with, and have them, throw in compensation for take the salary, because was he the answer at goalie? No. But when he filled in for lengthy periods of time for the Blackhawks, were they okay? Yes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look what he did last year. He was really good in the backup role.
Yeah, I think, to the point where a lot of crazy fans thought that they should get rid of Crawford and keep him.
Yeah, I mean, I love Scott Darling, but no way is he better than Corey Crawford.
No, not at all. Is it in the realm of possibility? Possibly. But I mean, does it happen? I don't know about all that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there are some free agent options out there that I really think they should explore. Obviously, there are a lot of free agents who are old and past their prime, but there are still some good guys on this list. I am curious as to what they think their approach is going to be. I don't see anything really different other than a free agent signing, because if Corey Crawford's healthy, I don't see them trading any important assets or much for a backup goaltender. I really don't. Traditionally, the backup goaltender will sign via free agency. It doesn't always happen that way, but there's no way I think it's coming from the pipeline, and I really don't see a trade.
I mean, I feel like if you were to bring Scott Darling back, it would be one of those things where you traded a 4th round pick and you got Darling and a 3rd round pick back, but you had to eat that salary.
Yeah, that's
like it's one of those ones where you still gain some draft assets, but I just, you have a very good sample size and you know what you have in him, and maybe it's just the limelight. Maybe it's being too far away from Joliet or whatever, and it's like cutting Samson's hair.
Yeah, right.
Get him too far away from Joliet and he can't play.
Exactly.
But I found that tweet. It was Ilya Brizgalov.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. How
He tweeted, "Hey Blackhawks,
That's
need a
right.
goalie that'll be healthy all year
I forgot
round."
about that. He was taking a break from paying attention to the Cosmos and wanting to get back in the National Hockey League again.
Yeah, he's a funny dude. I would like it just because of comic relief. Because I don't know if you've ever seen it. Like, he's hilarious. Like, he is really funny. I watched this thing where it was after he was already out of the league, and they sent him to like this NHL All-Star event, and he was just interviewing players. But it was just like, it was hilarious because he was just like asking them those ridiculous things, and I was laughing hysterically. And it was much more funny because he seems very serious, and he's got like that like Russian accent, and then to just come out with these funny things, it just really caught me off guard, and I was laughing hysterically. I would like it for the comedic relief because Corey Crawford's not very funny.
No, he's not. He's not.
Much superior goalie by leaps and bounds, but not funny at all.
No, he's Not the kind of guy who's going to be hosting a comedy event or anything like that. He's just a very straight face, stare into space type guy when he's on the bench, and he keeps pretty quiet. Except, well, let's face it, there was the one time he was pretty funny and epic. You know what I'm talking about, but that was one time.
I mean, it was the Crawford injury a blessing in disguise? Because if he would have played, they probably would have been, right there for a wild card spot. And if they would have made the wild card, nothing really substantially would have changed. But seeing him go down just showed everything that he bandaged.
Yeah, no, I was actually thinking about that the other day because let's face it, we talked about it earlier, how we don't want to turn into the Red Wings of this past decade where they were just squeaking into the playoffs, getting eliminated, but they'd still say, oh, we made the playoffs, so we're going to continue to try to plug holes with aging veterans. I think you could argue that it was kind of a blessing in disguise, but I also don't want to say that because you don't want to be like, oh, I'm glad Crawford was hurt or there was something wrong. I don't really want to say that, and I know that's not what you're trying to say either, but I think that it was kind of important, though, for this season to happen to see a lot of the holes be exposed. I think that it really woke up a lot of people. I mean, let's face it, this team was kind of exposed last year, but a lot of it was hidden by the superior goaltending. And then when things didn't always go their way, they were really first exposed in the playoffs. That was noticeable last year, and then it lasted pretty much all of this year. So I think that in order for there to be kind of a return to glory, you had to have a season like this. You had to wake up and say, hey, there are a lot of things wrong now. Things aren't what they used to be. We got to make some changes.
Absolutely. And I didn't root for Crawford to be hurt, but it was, if he's going to be hurt, we might as well take something positive away from it. And that was we saw all of the problems front and center that are wrong with this team. So we know what needs to be fixed and the degree it needs to be fixed. I think if Crawford would have played most of the games this year, you'd have been like, Forsberg was okay. And I think we even said that is the starts that he missed, Crawford missed in the beginning of the season, just, taking nights off like standard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, Forsberg had a good night and then an okay night. And even the first few games that you had to play him when Crawford was substantially out, you're like, okay, there's been some ups and downs. And then you just saw what he truly was. So had Crawford been healthy, you probably would have stuck with Forsberg because you're like, okay, he was okay. But now you know that you need a far superior backup goalie. But on the brighter side, you got to see a lot of the younger players get to go in there and show what they're able to do. Case in point is, if this was a team fighting for the playoffs, Quenneville would have been riding veterans much harder and longer.
Absolutely.
And because this was a lost season, you got a lot of younger players. And you saw DeBrincat respond in kind, led the team in goals. Alex DeBrincat led a team that had Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves, and he led them in goals.
Yeah. Yeah, you saw things like that. You saw Dylan Sakura come up. You saw that Edzell come up, even though it really wasn't a big sample size. But it's kind of funny when you looked at, going to go semi-off track here, but staying on track. You saw what those young kids did in that awesome win against the Blues that had an awesome ending, and it was like the only good thing that happened really outside of Eddie O getting cured of cancer and a couple of DeBrincat hat tricks this season. You saw what some of those kids can do, and it resulted in something good, even though it wasn't for their own playoff purposes. You saw them come up in a big spot to eliminate or at least make it really hard for another team in your division to make the playoffs. I think that it was very important, no doubt, to see some of those kids get in and play. Because, I mean, if they were in a playoff race, you really wouldn't see a lot of those guys.
I mean, look at the evolution of Nick Schmaltz and Vinny Hinostroza. You have to look at those two guys as a huge part of what your future is.
Yeah, for sure. And isn't he a free agent, Hinostroza?
Is he? If he is, he's a restricted free agent.
Yeah, I think he's a restricted free agent.
They got the money.
I'm gonna look. I'm gonna bring.
They got the money
here
to bring him back. So I don't see him going anywhere.
Yeah, I'm not.
But
too
then you
worried
also
there.
saw the dichotomy of your blue liners. You either have old, slow guys or guys with zero experience. There was nobody in the middle for the most part. So you need to address that. And
that's the biggest worry outside goaltender behind Crawford.
And if you assume Crawford comes back healthy, is that masks again the need for a high-end backup goalie, and it really puts the burden on replacing a top 4 defenseman. And you really hope, because this was such a terrible season, the Blackhawks finished with the 7th worst record, which gives them a 6.5% chance of getting that number 1 overall pick and drafting Rasmus Dahlin, who is the consensus number 1 pick defenseman. And people look at him as a potential superstar defenseman.
Yeah, I mean, he's a unanimous first overall draft guy. Like, that's how good he is.
And we're right around the same spot where we were in the when we won the lottery to win Patrick Kane. Just putting that out there.
Oh my God. Can you imagine how they're going to explode the hockey world if the Blackhawks get that?
And again, it would go back to, I would be like, it's not rigged. Got to people be crazy. But if the New York Rangers get the number 1 pick, I'm going to throw things and be like, it is fixed. It is fixed. Or if Detroit gets the number 1 pick, it's fixed.
Imagine like the Coyotes getting like the 4th pick after all that.
Yeah, so the Blackhawks have a 6.5% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick and a 20.4% chance of getting a top 3 pick. And if they don't, they only do a lottery for the first 3 pick. So the Blackhawks, even though they won and beat the Blues and knocked them out of the playoffs, they also still moved up as far as their odds of getting a top draft pick. That's a win-win situation right there.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Yeah, I guess that I don't really have anything else for the Blackhawks. I think today's the 8th, so 3 weeks until the NHL draft lottery. And then the draft is at the end of June, I believe. So right around the NFL draft, we will know whether or not the Blackhawks get the number 1 pick, which would be awesome. Because
I would just lose my mind if that happened.
I know, because then we got last year's top pick, and we would have young superstar defensemen. It would be sweet.
Yeah, and you can also pray that somehow the Predators lose in the first round to get a better first round pick. But yeah, I think the chances of that are almost none.
You never know. Stranger things have happened.
Hockey is a crapshoot. It really is. But yeah.
All right. So now jump into baseball.
Yeah. Been looking forward to talking about this all night.
You want to talk Cubs or Sox?
We can address Sox first, just because I have a lot of Cubs thoughts on my mind.
I have a lot of Cubs thoughts. The White Sox, I've actually watched parts of most of the games. Honestly, I would say it's probably, I've watched about even. I mean, I think I've watched more whole games of the Cubs, but I think I probably watched the same number of innings between Cubs and Sox this year. In the White Sox, although they're definitely a terrible team, there is a lot of promise. I mean, I think
absolutely.
I think we all saw the promise down the road, but you're starting to see some of that promise much earlier than expected. I would not be shocked if next year they just took a huge leap. There's definitely big holes still there. Like Giolito got hammered pretty good, but you had a great start from Reynaldo Lopez today. The bats have been pretty good. Matt Davidson has as many home runs as Giancarlo Stanton and Judge combined. So you're seeing quality stuff there. And Avi Garcia is continuing where he left off last year and crushing the ball. And I honestly think that the White Sox are going to say, let's flip him and get something really good. And, Moncada he's having some of the similar struggles that you're seeing with Ian Happ, but you also see the power and the plate ability that he has in those fleeting moments. And for a young kid, he's getting some really valuable experience in no pressure situations.
Yeah, you see Moncada is really good at pitch identification and balls out of the zone. He'll draw his walks, and right now he's trying to work on pretty much identification in the strike zone and being able to hit. But he's so young, it'll come. It's just you got to play and work through the growing pains, and that's just part of the game. Tim Anderson has looked really good for them too. Even though stealing bases isn't really a thing much these days, he's been doing it really well. He's been drawing more walks. Matt Davidson, like you brought up with the home runs, he's also drawing walks too. I do really like Reynaldo Lopez a lot. He's looked pretty good overall. And Giolito, he had one rough start, but you can kind of say, well, it was really cold. It was hard to locate and throw strikes, but the movement looks really good on his pitches regardless. They didn't really hit him hard for most of the game. The Tigers just kind of drew a lot of walks. So yeah, there's absolutely some promise here. And I still think that they will surprise some people this year with a more respectable record than realized. And I think next year they're going to be in the playoffs despite some holes, but I think they will fill the holes as time moves on.
I just think they need to sign a frontline pitcher to make that jump. But I think,
absolutely.
But I wasn't shitting on Giolito. He had a rough start, but it was more of a, there's growing pains, is because you've seen the promise that he has. You've seen the stuff, and there's been command issues here, missed pitch here, but you have to like the promise there. Is his stuff as nasty as Carlos Rodon's when Rodon is on? No, but you also can't rely on the command or even the health of Rodon. So Giolito is going to be very important for you, and you still have Kopech, and you have a ton of young pitching in the minors, so you don't even need to rely on Rodon. You don't need to rely on Fulmer. Between Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez, that's a almost half of a starting staff right there that you're very confident in as contributors going forward.
Yeah, that's such a nice thing about having so much depth in your organization. You can fail on one thing, but if you succeed on the other, you'll still likely succeed.
And you were right about Matt Davidson drawing walks. I think the stat that slapped the White Sox a little bit was the first two players to K over 160 times and walk less than 20 were Tim Anderson and Matt Davidson, both on the same team. And Matt Davidson had 19 walks last year, and he already has 6 through 9 games. So that's a good start. Tim Anderson had 13 walks last year, and he's already got 4.
Yeah, that's another thing.
And Tim Anderson already has 5 steals. He only had 15 steals all of last year.
Yeah, they're moving up. A lot of those guys are moving up, and it's only going to get better.
And I still think Ricky Renteria is a huge reason for these kids not getting overwhelmed by the moment. Is if you're a team with so little major league experience. I mean, other than Abreu and Shields, for the most part, this is a very young team, and they're sticking with it. They're playing hard. They're not being overwhelmed, and you gotta put some of that on Ricky Renteria, and I love the guy, and I'm glad he got a shot in Chicago, and the White Sox are really looking up. They're fun baseball to watch. They're more fun than they have been in a long time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's much more fun watching them now compared to 2 years ago when they were trying to sell you that a team with Todd Frazier and Brett Lawrie in the middle of the lineup after Abreu were contenders.
And honestly, as good of a pitcher as Chris Sale was, and having Sale and Quintana on that team, is you just felt like they were just spinning their wheels.
Yeah.
They weren't going anywhere. And this team, you just feel the potential. And when you watch them, there's been fielding issues. When James Shields is your number one pitcher, you're not going to go far. And Moncada, is what is he batting 200 right now? So you're definitely getting most of your runs off of a handful of guys that are hitting, but you're seeing progression from guys, and that's the important thing. Is it's not leaps and bounds. You're seeing baby steps forward. I think that's awesome. Matt Davidson, did you expect him to be a cog for the future? But you're starting to see that this guy is pretty good.
Yeah, he is. He's got a lot of talent, got a lot of power, and if he gives you power and walks, that's very valuable these days.
And the funny thing is I don't expect this trend to continue, but Minnesota is winning that division with a 4-3 record.
Yeah, the Cleveland Indians are off to a bit of a slow start. I still as much as I like the Twins lineup, I still don't think they have the pitching there. So I think when the Indians, hopefully for their sake, heat up, that, they may run away with it eventually. But, if they don't, that may give the White Sox a chance to at least hang around. If they keep playing at a competitive level, they can hang around there. Obviously, the White Sox will go through really good stretches and some really tough ones, as most young teams do, with a lot of growing pains. But until someone starts running away, a lot of those teams are going to hang around.
I honestly think that this is the most optimistic I've ever been during a sweep ever. Like, the White Sox just got swept by the Tigers, but you feel like they came away with a lot of positives. And you're right, I ultimately feel the Indians are just going to wake up and go, oh yeah, we're the Cleveland Indians, and let's run away with this. But if they struggle, kind of like the Cubs did last year, and leave teams to meander around, I think the White Sox can hover there, not truly challenge, but hover. And that's got to be a confidence booster to these young kids. Look
Absolutely.
At this. We are young, inexperienced, hitting all kinds of growing pains at the same time, and look at how close we're keeping this. And and honestly, it's going to be more of other teams not reaching their potential rather than the White Sox succeeding, but it doesn't matter. It's all perception.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely. And I think that if the White Sox beat their division rivals a bit more, like they beat up on Kansas City, that'll give them, no matter how good or bad they are, that'll definitely give them some confidence. And if you play competitively against a contender like the Indians, that's only going to do it better.
And it's funny, you're talking about how, Cleveland's struggling to start the season. Is most of the teams that people were riding high on before the season started are struggling. Boston's not struggling, and the Astros are not struggling, but the Yankees are. People were thinking that they were just going to dominate everybody, and they're 5-5, and they haven't really played anybody. They played like the Orioles and Can't remember who else, but they didn't really play. It's not like they played the Astros or Boston or anybody or the Dodgers. Washington is 4-4. The Dodgers just had to win extra innings against the Giants today to go to 3-6. So,
yeah, and, it's hard to judge a team like that so early. Many teams,
absolutely.
Like the
you can't judge these teams yet, but it's just for the Cubs' sake and Cubs fandom is let's not all freak out because the Dodgers are 3-6, and there's teams that are equally as hyped as the Cubs and are doing worse. Just relax.
Yeah. Look, I mean, the Dodgers are probably the biggest example, I think, out of anybody. We've seen so many times where a team will get off to a really hot, uncharacteristic start and they cool off, or many teams start off really, really slow and then pick things up. It happens every year. And one thing I was thinking about the other day was, what is the average record the past few years of division winners in April? This is probably a great way to transition into Cubs talk because I know we have plenty of Cubs talk, but I feel like when we start the season, we're kind of almost expecting what we saw in 2016 where they started off 25-5. And I think with most division winners, even that is incredibly rare. I'm sure there are plenty of times where a division winner got off to just kind of like an okay or mediocre start. It just goes to show that the first month, you don't want to dig yourself a hole, but just because you don't go 25-5 the first month doesn't mean you lose your chance at the division. Some teams will start off 15-15 or 16-14, and it's not the end of the world, and it doesn't really determine anything.
No, it's I think the old saying is you don't win the World Series in April, but you can lose it in April. So I think the philosophy is, you go from playing in 100 degrees and, in really nice weather in Arizona or Florida to, and where you're not traveling. I mean, all those games are fairly local, and then you start traveling and playing in front of big crowds and the weather's not as nice. And, it's pitching isn't where it's at. Hitting isn't where it's at. And April is just kind of a feel it out month. It's like a boxing matches, 12-round fight. Those first 3 rounds suck always for the 90% of the time. It's a lot of jabs and seeing what the other guy's going to do and how he's going to throw. And that's what baseball is. The April baseball sort of sucks. And then by mid-May, that's when you start to feel things heating up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of times when you get a team very early on in the season, they come in playing with nothing to lose, like they're not expected to contend or everything. So they kind of hype themselves up a little bit. And sometimes teams think that they're going to run away with everything. And, maybe they get a little overconfident and they kind of take some of these other teams for granted. I think it's really interesting to kind of look at the situation and say, hey, why is this team outperforming a team that is supposed to contend? There are so many different factors, but you got to also think about April is such a weird month in baseball because of the weather, because of some of the matchups. It goes to show how weird of a game baseball is, especially when you play 162 grueling games of it.
I mean, the Cubs' second series, Cincinnati had snow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, they went from indoors in Miami to snow to indoors in Milwaukee. Now, they're coming home, but it's cold.
Look, the weather has been beyond miserable so far this season. I did an article for Blasting News a few days ago. It was sometime during the week. I'm going to try to pull it up now. just to look at the date. Okay, so it was 4 days ago. So that means it was published in the middle of the week. And at that point, it technically wasn't even a full week into the season yet. And there were already 8 postponed games. There was pretty much a postponed game every day, or multiple even, because of the cold weather, because of all this. And it's not surprising, the weather in most areas, especially the upper Midwest, is still terrible. And you got to think, what are they going to do to kind of put this down other than moving the season or shortening the season? I think that they really are going to have to force these games to be put in climates that are suitable or in domed stadiums. And because of that, you're going to get a lot of teams that aren't playing a lot of home games to start the season. You know, maybe that has an effect on some teams.
I mean, you have to address this. Is tomorrow is the Cubs home opener. It's going to snow.
Yeah. And we are already over a week into the season. We haven't had to play at Wrigley Field yet. We're finally coming back home. Hey, look, snow.
Yeah, it's going to be a high of 37 and snow for the home opener in baseball.
Look, I just hope that the Cubs really shorten up their swings, because no way in hell are they going to be getting home run balls if they're trying to swing for them in those conditions.
Oh, absolutely not. It's going to be rough going, and it's going to be somebody's going to win on a dumb play. If it's, the blooping single or an error, throwing error, or hell, even like, was it yesterday that the Astros won because somebody dropped an infield pop-up?
Gosh, yeah, the Padres. Oh,
how about them Padres?
And it's gonna be really frustrating when the Cubs play that Padres team and lose 2 or 3 to them.
Yeah, but you know what is last week we talked about how we were just hoping for a split on the road versus Milwaukee, and the Cubs should have swept, but took 3 of 4.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I feel good about taking 3 of 4. You're absolutely right. They really should have won that other game the other night. But I also try to look at it as the Cubs squandered so many chances. So did Milwaukee. It just felt like after we got out of so many jams that it was just destiny for us to win, even though it wasn't. But hey, it's weird. You nearly sweep your division rivals, who have overall a talented team, especially lineup-wise, but you struggled and split a series with a god-awful Marlins team. It's just weird.
Yeah, and it's funny because the Cubs, the one game that they lost against the Brewers, is Kyle Hendricks was dealing. He looked fantastic until the one inning. I was at a bar, and I was waiting for a band I really liked that was playing to go on, and we were all sitting at the bar, and I went to go get in the line to go to the bathroom, and I come back, and I'm like, what the hell did I miss? What happened? And I watched the replays, and I was like, oh, geez. It's like the one pitch, I don't know how it got hit. The other one was just a missed pitch. So it's like, that's a Kyle Hendricks MO, is pitch a great game and then, leave one hanging.
Yeah, the pitch to Eric Thames that tied the game, the 2-run homer, that was probably supposed to have more movement and wind towards the side and down. That was just left right over the heart of the plate. And to me, what I told myself was the Brewers were due, because they had gotten shut out the previous 2 games. And it was almost like they can't keep getting shut out forever, even against Kyle Hendricks. You knew that eventually some balls in play were going to start dropping. It's just kind of unsustainable for that to go the other way. And it was an odd game, because in the first inning, they made Woodruff throw like 34, 36 pitches, over 30 pitches, something like that. And you're thinking, okay, you got 2 runs off that. He's already over 30 pitches. The bullpen is shorthanded already because of the Knebel injury. You think that would have been a pretty easy win. Unfortunately, after that first inning, Woodruff kind of settled down and they didn't take advantage of some chances. So that was a very frustrating loss.
Oh, absolutely. And you have to feel that healthy Rizzo would have helped change the outcome, or at least made it more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Rizzo traditionally does very well in that ballpark, as a number of Cubs do.
And he traditionally does well against bad pitchers.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's face it.
But yes, I mean, Anthony Rizzo, we've lost him for a few games due to back tweak, which is something you don't want to see this early in the season, because especially on a big guy, back injuries linger.
Yeah. Maybe he's just tired of getting hit by so many pitches and he wanted a break.
And maybe that's why Caratini was on this team, because they have him playing first. But I don't know. Can't you just move Bryant over to first and put LaStella at second and then Baez at third? I just feel like you need to get LaStella's bat in there a little more.
Yeah, but I also feel like it's important to give Caratini some time to play.
In Iowa.
Yeah, but I also feel like it is important for him to play at the major league level. He's proven enough in Iowa. He had some good moments in this series, no doubt.
It's weird. He's got weird at bats. And I don't know if you're seeing it the same way, but like his eye is good. Like he's watching balls that are, letting him go that are outside the zone, but his swing just looks awkward. Like it's like he's not taking good cuts. I don't know.
Yeah, there have been some odd swings. I'll agree with that.
It's like a swing almost like something hurts and you're not going through with it right, or they're awkward like 2 years ago, Jason Hayward, where they were like, you're like, there's a hitch in your get along somewhere. Like it doesn't seem right. Like, I don't know if he's got like a blister on his hand that once he gets to a certain point in the swing, like he's tensing up because it hurts. But it's just, there's something weird about it. I didn't know if I was the only one that noticed that.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't paid overly much attention to his swing, but I kind of see where you're coming from. But like you said, he's got some really good recognition, and he plays, he's not like Wilson Contreras high energy, but you got to give him credit for, playing hard. Yesterday during that big rally, he hustled out and not only was able to beat it out, but luckily it forced an error, a throwing error, because he would have been safe either way. He really hustled it out, and, he ended up going to second base. So you give him a lot of credit for playing hard at least. But yeah, there are some things that he still needs to work on. I was okay with him playing first base because he made a really nice play today defensively. I didn't see it live because I was busy today. I saw the replay of it, and I was impressed. It was a nice tag play on Ryan Braun.
Yeah, Ryan Braun. Well, we got him in our crosshairs.
Yes.
So I get that they're aggressive with John Lester. But I felt like he was just being a showboat, because he got that walking lead going to second, and then there was no throw at all going, when he stole second, and then he just didn't even wait. He just like, I'm just going to go right to third. And I was so happy that he looked stupid, and people were trying to laugh it off. John Lester was not laughing. John Lester was pissed.
He stared him down and just said, in his mind, probably, F you, you little twerp. I mean, that's probably what
F you, roidhead.
And I mean, it was one of those things that was just so satisfying for John Lester's sake.
The best was just the look on Ryan Braun's face, because he was just like, what the hell happened? Like, he just threw a bounce pass to throw me out.
Yeah, it was. I didn't see it live. I was out, but I watched the replay many times. And it was just so awesome. Lester, no hold back, just a stare down.
So it gets me to the Lester issue. Is John Lester's been a pitcher in professional baseball for how many years now?
Going back to like 2006.
It's been a long time. And this is not a new issue. So at what point do people go, you know what, this is a issue that we should be able to exploit, but nobody's really been able to exploit it consistently. So when do teams just, sort of give up is using it as part of their strategy? And, I could see being more aggressive, stealing second, but using it as their whole strategy. When is that going to go away? Because it's clearly the Cubs have employed a lot of ways to mitigate it. And, based on his record and the Cubs' success since he's been here, it's not an issue. So when do teams just quit?
I don't know. And I feel like toying with him on the base paths just pisses off the teammate trying to bat. It's like, dude, I'm trying to bat. This is just going to kind of screw things up and distract me. And I can't remember a time where John Lester's lack of throwing cost the Cubs in a big situation. I can't. I don't think it has. And we saw the past few years, even though he's making awkward passes, he still can get the out or pick off a guy. It happened in the game against Milwaukee. It happened against the Cardinals last year. It's like, okay, if you want to keep doing that, go ahead and distract your batter, and John Lester will get you free outs for us. But yeah, you feel like this is never going to end if it hasn't happened already.
I mean, if I'm an opposing manager and I have a guy that's a good base runner or, has decent speed, I just tell him, all right, we'll take a bigger lead than you usually do and then take that second base. But, taking third, Wilson Contreras is, if he gets a chance, he's probably going to throw you out because he's got a cannon. And you've already seen John Lester now that they've worked on the bounce pass is just keep taking second. Second seems to be they'll give it up. And that it puts your guy in scoring position, and your probability of scoring a run with a guy on second is much higher than a guy at first. So, just take small victories. You don't have to, if I'm an opposing manager, I'm going to take the small victory and the small advantage instead of being a big advantage or nothing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you took a bat out of an RBI situation's hands.
Yeah, you had a guy on second, scoring position, and you got greedy. You got greedy. You were given second base. That was a freebie, and you were not satisfied with getting a freebie going to second, so you try to get third, and it cost you.
Yeah, and I never like to say I hate anyone, and I really don't hate a player. I think hate's a very strong word, but I really am not a fan of Ryan Braun. And I think that the fact that it happened to Ryan Braun made that more satisfying. I'm going to be completely honest.
Ryan Braun has a punchy face.
Yeah, overall, he's had a great career. There's no doubt about it. I just pulled up his stats. He's got a 301 career average, 364 on base, 903 OPS. He's reached a 300 career home run mark. He's a very talented player. And when he was in his prime from 2008 to 2012, he was just an absolute elite ball player. And I give him a lot of credit for his talents. But just, man, he always got under my skin. And I think that it's just kind of funny that the villain of the Brewers for so long was the one that fell victim to that.
Yeah, it was satisfying. So trivia question. You may know the answer to this. Do you know who is leading Major League Baseball in exit velocity on their bat?
Is it still Jason Hayward?
Jason Hayward.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, through
that surprised a lot of people.
through Friday. I didn't look at the weekend, but through Friday, yes. And I was saying that I was average is not there, but he looks much better at the plate. Like it's watching him, you feel like he's probably like a 275, 280 hitter, and the numbers aren't there, but just the quality of the at bats looks so much better. He looks so much more comfortable up there, and you don't get that dread like a pitcher's batting. You're like, oh, this is a real batter up there.
Yeah, I definitely see there is improvement there. There are some times though where he's come up in big situations, and a few times he's hit it hard, but for bad luck. But there have been some times where the at-bats don't look good, though he has had other better at-bats in other situations. I just hope it progresses, and I hope that he can find a bit more grass a bit more consistently, because there are times where he does hit it very well and it just kind of dies or gets babbipped, and that's been very frustrating for him, no doubt. Very weird series though for Jason Hayward, because 2 games in a row he misplayed routine fly balls, a guy who's like a 5-time Gold Glover. I just found that really weird, and I can't help but wonder if the lighting at Miller Park had an effect on that.
Were they both playing center, right?
No, it was when he was playing right.
Oh, they were both at right?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. We'll see. It's the dome lighting is weird. If you look at, I can't specifically talk about Milwaukee, but the dome that the Twins used to play in, that one was bad. A lot of Twins players would talk about how hard it was to play outfield there. And you think about it, in when you're playing outside, is the sun, where the sun is going to be and where your blind spot is going to be.
And it's not magnified by anything.
Yeah, it's not, you're not going to be surprised. You see the ball trajectory, you know where the sun is going to blind you, and you've got your sunglasses in the bill of your hat, and you're prepared. But a lot of times in these domes, especially, this is not an older one, but older ones, you can get surprised. You can get surprised by the way you lose it coming off of a bat. You get surprised by, once you've got a beat on it and you just sort of lose it. Funny things happen. I don't know what to say about that.
I don't know. Were you watching yesterday's ball game?
I just saw highlights.
Okay, so they started at 3:10, and what happened was, you know what Miller Park looks like. You know how the retractable roof is windowed, like not the roof itself, but the thing supporting it on the sides. You know how it's windowed, right? Yeah. So the sun was just glaring on half the infield and the outfield, like absolutely glaring. And it caused Lorenzo Cain to lose a fly ball that resulted in a Bryant triple. So if you go back and look and you watch early in that game, when there was a ground ball to the shortstop or the third baseman, they'd pick it up in the shadow. And when they threw it, the whole screen just turned white because that area was drenched in sun through those windows. I'm surprised that those windows aren't like tinted or somehow, because the sunlight just drenched half that field.
I've been to that stadium a couple times, but every time it's been dome open. It's been like midsummer. So I've never actually been there for dome closed as person. I've seen on TV. So it's
same. I've only been there dome open as well.
But if you're having Lorenzo Cain and Jason Hayward have trouble in the outfield, then there's got to be an external cause, because both of those guys are freaking really good outfielders.
It was just so weird because like what happened was he misjudged it and then he tried to jump at the last second and then it would bounce over him. Yesterday, it resulted in the go-ahead run, which didn't matter because they had the epic comeback win. But today, it should have been a triple with another misplay, very similar, but he didn't run out of the box, so it was only a double. Luckily, that time, Quintana was able to wiggle out of it, but it was just very strange.
So, can you think, and I'm going to use a very specific word, is there a more exciting player in Major League Baseball than Javi Baez?
He's definitely up there.
I use that word exciting, not saying best or greatest. I'm saying exciting, and I think that's a very fitting word for him.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the things that he makes out of nothing is incredible.
I mean that the play from the other night when he hit the triple and he got hit in the head with the throw to third and then came home. Like who else is making that play? I mean, part of it is just his ego and cockiness and confidence. Part of it is his ability. Part of it is just his speed and savvy. You combine that and man, does he do some exciting things.
Well, I thought the most amazing thing was the first game of the Milwaukee series. Lester hit the shot up the middle, got under the glove of the second baseman, and then Javi, who was on second, was able to just sprint home and slide in safely. That was amazing.
The guy is a wizard with his glove, but on the base path, he might be his glove's equal.
Oh yeah, I mean, some of the runs he's scored over the years is just incredible. I mean, remember last year on the walk-off single by Alex Avila against the Jays, the ball was hit, the tying run came to score, Baez was at second, the throw came in. As the throw was coming in, Baez wasn't even in the frame. And then as soon as the catcher got the ball to turn around, just zoom like lightning, he came in and slid.
Yeah, it's just so exciting. I know a lot of people talk baseball being boring, but there's nothing boring about Javi Baez.
No,
nothing.
Not at all. Not at all.
Even when he's got a bad plate appearance, it's exciting because he swings out of his shoes and
you feel the breeze from his bat.
Yeah, and he probably leads the league in number of times his batting helmet falls off on the base path.
Yeah, he's got to be up there in that category.
I don't know if anybody keeps that category or that stat, but I'm going to assume that unless somebody proves me wrong, that he's up there.
Oh, he's got to be. He's got to be.
What else? The bullpen has looked really good, other than probably Justin Wilson.
No, Justin Wilson's looked good though. Have you watched him?
He's hot and cold. He looked good yesterday. But then the other day he did not. But other than him, everybody's looked good. Cishek, you've seen great stuff out of him. I've been really happy with this rebuild bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, just a quick thing on Wilson. He had a really good first inning the other day, and then the walks started coming. I think he walked 3 guys in the 1 inning, but so far 4.2 innings, 0 ERA, 7 strikeouts. So I think to me, he's looked pretty good. But yeah, other guys look great. Carl Edwards Jr. looks great. Brian Dunsing looks good again. We finally got to see Brandon Morrow these last 2 days, and that looks good.
Yeah, I've been really happy. And, you're starting to see better outings from the pitchers. Good outing from Quintana, good outing from Yu Darvish, good outing from Lester. So, if we could just get some bats come to life, you're going to see a streak here.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw my stat on Twitter that I posted after the series about Lester, Darvish, and Quintana. They really had redemption starts. If you combine the guys, 18 innings pitched, 1 run, and 21 Ks among the three of them. That's pretty good.
And it, as a Yu Darvish is a consolation prize for not getting Ohtani. It's funny. Spring training is, I think most people were like, man, Ohtani might need a year where you're not expecting much because of some poor play during spring training. But man, that guy he's having an April on him. Almost had a no-hitter today. Had some big home runs.
I think one thing that has me scratching my head already are some of the lineups. I don't know how you feel exactly about those.
Cubs lineups or baseball?
Yeah. Cubs lineups.
I don't know. I just sort of roll with it because Joe is Joe. And I want to bring up a point about him. I guess we can use this to roll into it, but yeah, go ahead. I honestly haven't noticed or, taken much stock in things. So go with it.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I feel for the most part. I just thought he had one really weird day where he kept Ian Happ in the leadoff while Ben Zobrist has been crushing the ball, who's looked just so good so far. And then there was not pinch hitting for Schwarber in a terrible situation where he's facing a lefty. But yeah, I mean, overall, I agree with you. It was just something I wanted to bring up because it was on my mind. A lot of people were talking about it. People are always going to talk about it. I just kind of wanted to know what you felt about it.
Yeah, it's actually, I have a point I wrote down in my notes is, are Chicago fans fed up with Joe Madden?
No, I think a lot legit are. I think a lot of people don't like the way he structures lineups. Sometimes I think it's just result based where if it did work, he would be a genius. But because it didn't work, because a guy had a bad day, people are mad at him. Obviously, there are times when I don't always agree with his decisions, but I mean, that's going to happen with any manager. You saw a lot of the irrational yapping at him in losses that we've had recently, but I mean, that's what Chicago fans do.
I don't know if you saw the quote that he had the other day where he took a shot at fans. And I
didn't see that.
He basically said that fans criticize bullpen adjustments because they don't understand the nuances of the rest of the game. He talked about how they don't understand the shifts or outfield positioning or things like that. And he's like, so the only thing they think they understand is the bullpen. So that's what they criticize. And I was like, man, that's a big shot for somebody that is already in the fans, the crosshairs.
Yeah, but I agree there are times when I don't understand what he does, and I think that fans do have a right to sometimes question, but I think some of the, I know more than a major league manager type fans, it can probably be a little irritating when you're surrounded by that in the media. And, maybe that irritation kind of builds up. I don't know how much he pays attention to the fans, but clearly based on what he said, he knows that there's been a lot of criticism towards himself. And, it is kind of a shot, but I'm kind of okay with this shot. And if I kind of questioned him and he kind of called me out and gave me a rational reason, I get, who am I to question a major league manager? I mean, there are times when I'm probably overly critical of him and in times that I probably shouldn't be, but that's just kind of natural as a fan. It's probably the people who are constantly ragging on him and the ones that like legit want him fired. That's just beyond crazy.
I think my issue was that a warranted response to fans? Possibly. But I feel like what makes it unwarranted is the fact that you don't hear him own up when he's clearly done a boneheaded move.
You know what? And that's a very good point.
It's if he were to be like, yeah, in the World Series, I totally messed up by taking Hendricks out and going to the bullpen. That was a boneheaded move. But no, he doubles down. It's like, nope, it was the right decision. Look, we won. And I think that leads to frustration. And I think that's where his comment becomes unwarranted because, don't take shots at the people that ultimately are paying your salary when they're criticizing, because you're not criticizing yourself. If you're a little more humble, I think I think humility is a big characteristic that Chicago fans look for. We look for that blue collar, grinded out, and humility. LA fans look for one thing, New York fans look for another thing. Chicago, we like our blue collar, lunch pail bring in guys, and that's not Joe. And I think it's, if you think about it, the guy broke a ridiculously long losing streak of not winning a World Series. And you would think that anybody associated with that team, even peripherally, would be looked at as a hero in this town.
Sure.
And we're like 2 years removed and fans are griping at him. Mike Ditka, who says some of the dumbest things ever, and everybody just like, he could fart in the breeze and people are like, whoa, Ditka. And, and that's a team that at that point had how many world championships? So it's weird how we look at it. And I think it's because Ditka's not afraid to say he made mistakes and seem much more blue collar and one of us than Joe. I think that's part of it.
I gotta tell you, I really, really, really like that analysis because it's actually something I thought about. Do I still kind of stand by what I said by saying I can see why he's frustrated by constant, like sometimes unwarranted slack? Yeah, but that I can't disagree with anything you said. Because there are times when Madden does kind of drive me crazy with the lack of accountability. Like I don't think I've ever said like that was on me. Here's something that caught my eye. The last game of the Marlins series, it was a 6-0. And he said that was the most well-played shutout. You know what it reminded me of? It was like Dave Wannstedt talk. If you take away this and you take away that, we would have won.
Oh my God, it totally is Dave Wannstedt talk.
I'm like, that's Dave Wannstedt talk. I mean, I like Joe, but come on, dude. They didn't hit. They screwed up in so many situations with runners on. Well, if you took away that, you take away this. I'm like, that's Dave Wannstedt talk right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, as a major league manager should know more than a fan, period.
Yes.
And if you ever think as a major league manager you don't know as much of a fan, and then you are in the wrong profession. So I would be annoyed. But, on the flip side so you're right. He should feel superior to fans because A, his experience, and B, because we're not privy to all of the advanced metrics that he is.
Right.
So yeah, we don't understand the same things about the shifts because I don't know what Ryan Braun spray chart looks like with 2 strikes and no runners on. I don't know.
He has the information. He has the scouting reports. We don't.
Yeah. So, but you know what? If I'm against Anthony Rizzo, then you know what? I'm gonna put the shift on, even though I don't know the exact spray chart that he has. So it's I may not know the intricacies of it, but I also understand what the more well-known players, their tendencies are and where I'm going to play the guys. So, it's you, of course, better than I do, Joe Madden, but also I'm also willing to own up when I make a boneheaded play.
Yeah, I think that it may be fair to say, okay, I don't really have the information or IQ you have. Will I ever have baseball IQ even in the same universe as Joe Madden? Hell no. No, no, no. But, attitude is something that I think is much more fair to criticism. And I love the way Joe Madden runs his team through, a positive eye, connects with the players personally. I think that's great. But to the whole accountability thing, maybe that really is fair game for us to criticize and say, you know what? In any job, if you make a mistake, you got to own up to it, no matter what it is. So if Joe Madden wants to kind of take shots at fans for, saying, they don't have the information or whatever that I do and I'm a big league manager, you know what? That's fair because we don't. And anyone who thinks otherwise, come on, stop. But when it comes to attitude like that, not owning up to mistakes, or maybe having a better idea or better explaining why something didn't work and not trying to pull the Dave Wannstedt talk out of you, that is, I think, probably more fair game. And that's really something that has to be thought about a lot, because you made a lot of great points that I didn't think about, even though I was thinking about the other day, why is he talking like Dave Wannstedt?
Yeah, I mean, that's just my point, is I'm not choosing a side in this argument because I think both sides have a legit point, but it's hard to see a guy fight back when there's criticism, when it's probably unwarranted criticism, when he's not willing to take on the mess of when he does make a mistake. That's just my whole point. And I think that, and the fancy talk he has, where it's like, hey Joe, why'd you choose to wear a purple shirt today? And I think back to the vineyards of Italy when my wife and I went on vacation, and I think as Chicagoans, we're like, hey, why'd you wear a purple shirt? And he's like, because I'm going to do something stupid, and I want everyone to think about the Vikings. Like, I think that's what we want to hear. Just off the hip, dumbery. I think that's what we look for in Chicago. I don't think we look for the floweriness, and it just seems like it doesn't fit with us. But I appreciate who he is because and what he's done. It's a weird dichotomy.
Yeah, it really is. It's one of those things where you realize that he's not going to be everything you wanted because of how unorthodox he is. But if you're getting results like a World Series championship and a changed culture that breeds success, then yeah, you are going to just have to learn to deal with some of those things that Joe Madden does that may be unorthodox. I mean, think about the contrast, the exact opposites of him and, say, Lou Piniella. I mean, they could not be more different. Joe, we're going to relax and we're going to do some nice haiku writing in the dugout before. I'll bring some animals to the ballpark and yada, yada. And Lou Piniella, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to sip some scotch. And if you say something I don't like, I'm going to kick your ass. It's completely different.
I just think about what went through John Lackey's head every time Joe Madden opened his mouth. I got a long memory, and this guy is finishing me doing. Back in Texas, we would have whooped this guy's ass.
Joe, if you were my manager, I'd eat you.
I don't want a petting zoo in the dugout. I just want to chew chaw and think about how much ass I'm going to kick later.
I don't want the animals because I am the animal.
the monologue in John Lackey's head must have been amazing.
Oh my God. And think about it. Not only him, but John Lester is not the type of guy that I think matches up with a Joe Madden mentality either.
No, really, think about who on that team probably matches up well. It's a Bryant Rizzo. But like I mean, none of
I think Javi matches up well too.
yeah, I don't see any of the pitchers matching up with that because, like, John Lester's probably is very John Lackey like, and Hendricks is probably just doing calculus in the corners. Like, I just don't have time to think about things that aren't things I need to think about. And, Yu Darvish is, I don't know, like, he seems too, like, rigid. And I just don't feel like any of them fit with that vibe from the pitchers.
And Quintana's just very quiet. He doesn't really, he's just very quiet.
I mean, CJ Edwards, I do see fitting there, but at the starting pitchers, I do not.
No, I don't, especially not John Lester. I think that here's the thing what John Lester does. Like, he does his own thing. He doesn't give a rat's ass what anyone thinks. I mean, when the Cubs won the division last year in St. Louis, like the 6th inning, he just went and cracked open beers. He's like, whatever. I know who's going to stop me at this point. I'm a veteran who's won 3 rings. Who's really going to say no to a winner like John Lester? Nobody.
John Lackey.
I might eat him later.
The last thing I had to talk about, you may have some more things, but the last thing I had to talk about with the Cubs is, holy hell, does Ian Happ look bad at the plate lately? I mean, other than that first pitch home run, you're right. He just doesn't look right up there. He's not even batting his weight, and he just looks uncomfortable up there.
Yeah, you throw him something off speed and down, and yeah, he's flailing at it, looking pretty ugly. I mean, he looked horrible yesterday, and then he redeemed himself with the game-winning hit, and that made me so happy. And I just pray that he can find a groove here soon. But yeah, man, has he had some ugly at-bats.
Yeah, what was it? Friday night he had a hit, but it was just like this, like, off the end of the bat blooper that I feel like, a better shortstop might have, gotten. It was just, and I'm like, all right, well, maybe baseball's a weird energy, and you're like, maybe that's the thing that's going to get him started. That awful, lucky blooping single. And no, not really. It just, it feels like 2 years ago when the Cubs, the first year of Jason Hayward with the Cubs, and you just knew based on the way he was swinging that he was not going to come around for the season. He didn't look comfortable up there. There was weird things in his mechanics. And I know I said 2 weeks ago or a week ago that I felt like he had the tools to come out of it. I'm starting to worry a little bit because he just doesn't look right up there. And his swings in spring training looked great. Even when he was making outs, he just looked comfortable up there.
Yeah.
And now he just looks uncomfortable, unsure of himself. It's weird.
Yeah, I just wonder if it's something mental. Maybe he's pressing a little too hard. I'm not going to really give up on him yet because it's so early, but we're going to see how long this lasts. I think that it's going to be one of those things where if he has a good game or two, then things will really start to pick up. But right now, I think he needs a bit more confidence maybe because let's face it, when he started striking out, he really started pressing. And you saw the frustration and just complete and utter confusion when he'd go to the plate and try to bat. There was just a lot going wrong.
You wonder if Joe Madden's going to learn from the mistake of last year of leaving a young player batting leadoff for so long.
Yeah, I mean, right now, you got to make a change with that.
Oh, that's off the bat. Is Ian Happ should not be
Ben
a leadoff.
Zobrist should.
Is Ben Zobrist, and when you need days off, is go with Almora. And I know he's not hitting great either, but those have to be your guys right now. I just you can't have Ian Happ. You can't put a young player with that kind of pressure that he's just not doing it. Move him down the order, hope and do it sooner rather than later before you end up burning a whole season with him, being frustrated.
Exactly. Don't let it last too long because, like you said, we saw the negative effects of that. Ben Zobrist is coming out of the bats just absolutely swinging. And hopefully that's just a sign that he's healthy again and he still has something left in the tank. I mean, he's given you a great at-bat every time. He's hitting the ball hard from both sides. And think about it. Right now, he is slashing a nice 333, 440, 381. And that 333 could be even higher because he's hit some very hard balls for outs. If they were playing in a different stadium in Miami, he'd probably have 3 home runs already.
Yeah, I mean, Schwarber, the leadoff experiment it went on so long. I felt like you lost a whole season of Schwarber because of an injury. And then I felt you lost one because you just broke his confidence. So you lost 2 seasons of this guy, and that sucks. And you don't want to make that same mistake with Ian Happ. Is last year you hit a wall with him at a certain point, and I don't know if that was fatigue or if he had some nagging injuries because he was a different player at the end of the season. You wanted him to come out. He came out great in spring training, and you don't want to burn a whole season. You want to give him the confidence and the tools. And this is already a high pressure situation with the Cubs because of the expectations. And I just think you move him down the lineup. Is Javi's got confidence through the roof. You can bat him wherever, and he's going to give you the same at bat.
Yep.
You don't
so
want
does
that.
Wilson Contreras.
Yeah, you don't want Javi Baez leading off, but you could move him wherever, and he's just going to bat. And
yeah, he's going to do the same thing.
I think Happer, you're going to have to build that confidence back up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There was one more topic I really want to talk about the Cubs. Long story short, the keep the Cubs fans thing did not work, to nobody's surprise. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, the Brewers or they're only selling to people for the Cubs series in
Wisconsin.
If they had Wisconsin.
Yes.
So I heard a fan call in on Friday on sports radio midday, and he's a Cubs fan that lives in Wisconsin.
I heard the same phone call. I was driving a Good Friday service. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I didn't think of it from that perspective, but he basically said that as Cubs, I mean, the thing is, Milwaukee is so close to Illinois that there's a lot of Cubs fans that live on the other side of the border.
Exactly.
And for those fans, it's fantastic because they get to go to games even cheaper.
Yeah.
And you're going to have I get trying to do this sort of shenanigans and hijinks if you're a team that can sell out. If it's Blackhawks Red Wings, where it's got, like the Red Wings, they're close and they have a fan base that's, regional that can draw in your hometown. You're like, okay, but we can sell all these tickets on our own to our fans. We don't need their fans to sell tickets. The Brewers, not only did they backfire and there was still a ton of Cubs fans, that stadium was so empty for the home opening series.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't it like 26,000 or something announced?
Oh, it just looked empty. I mean, it looked empty.
Yeah, it really did. And I understand it's not going to be a sellout because it's early in the season. It's a school night. I get that, no doubt. But man, I thought it was going to be a little more full than that, especially considering what the game, I shouldn't say meant because it's early, but it's a game between two division rivals that are going to be duking it out. You would think there would be a little more there.
Yeah, I mean, you would expect more fans than that. It got a little better over the weekend games, but still, there was a lot of seats. Like, if you're a team that only has a certain number of season ticket holders, and you have a big stadium that holds a lot of people, and you have that many walk-up tickets available, doing shenanigans like that only just encourages people to defy you. And it's easy enough. Anybody that's a Cubs fan has a friend or a relative that has a Wisconsin address.
Yeah.
It's you know what? If you want to go, and if not, guess what? Those tickets are on StubHub for face value. You can buy them off StubHub.
People find tickets. The thing with me is this has been tried by so many different teams and it never works. It's not good for your own business. From just that pure business perspective, it's not good for it. Now, do I understand that the Brewers don't want to see their home stadium turn to a road stadium? I bet that's frustrating. I understand that. But they talked about how much revenue the Cubs could bring to the Brewers when they come here, not only for the team, but just for the surrounding restaurants, bars, and hotels. It brings a lot to the city of Milwaukee. And I've read, I don't know if this is 100% true, but one of the main reasons the Milwaukee Brewers moved to the National League was because they play the Cubs, and the Cubs would give them bigger crowds. I don't know if that's true or not, but I have heard that's the reason why Bud Selig moved them to the NL.
I mean, that's a possibility because he's going to do whatever benefits that team. So, right. It's not surprising at all. It's just, but it's silly. It's silly for a team that can't consistently sell games out to make this proclamation. And I've said it before and I've said it again. If you are so concerned about your team, your home turf getting invaded by opposing fans, you need a better class of fans. The thing with me about the Brewers is there's no doubt they have some dedicated fans. The fact of the matter is it's just not a big fan base. They do not have a very big fan base. It's a small market next to one of the largest markets, a team that's very old and has a lot of fans itself. It would, like you said, be one thing if it was more balanced, like the size overall, and they just weren't showing up. But the Brewers, they just don't have a big following. But to counter that a little bit is, do you think that same thing could happen with Green Bay, with the Packers? Do you think that they need to go, we are going to block Illinois people from buying tickets to the Packers games? No. I mean, I realize it's a different sport, but I think the Brewers just need to build their brand better to attract a bigger fan base. And they just don't have the fan base. And it's silly when teams don't have the fan base to necessitate that. So it's a weird thing, is teams that need to do this, like, kind of, stunt, those teams are the ones it's going to backfire for. And the teams that could pull it off don't do it because they don't need to. Like, you won't see the Yankees block Massachusetts people from going to a Yankees game when they're playing the Red Sox. They don't need to. Sure, there's going to be a bunch of Red Sox fans, but there's going to be way more Yankees fans, and they're probably going to fight.
Yeah, really.
So it's do the Cubs need to do that? No, because they're going to sell out with Cubs fans. That's just the way it works. Is maybe the Brewers built too big of a stadium to hold their fan base. Whatever it is, it's if you have to rely on that, it's never going to work.
Right. And, if I were just from a straight business perspective, there's a guy, hosts a Milwaukee sports talk radio show. I engaged with him on Twitter yesterday, and he said he honestly wanted to see he's like, all right, you guys won. Let's just increase the ticket prices for when the Cubs come here. I mean, business-wise, I get it, because the Cubs fans are going to buy the tickets no matter what. Nothing's going to stop them from buying the tickets. They pay an arm and a leg to go to Wrigley. They'll pay an arm and a leg to go to Miller Park, which is just an hour and a half up I-90. I mean, the Brewers, if they really increased the prices and the Cubs fans were still just getting these huge crowds at Miller Park, that'd be a great business move for them. They'd be making a huge profit from all that. They make a huge profit as it is. If they raise the prices a lot, then yeah, that would make the Brewers a lot of money. I think that one thing that is interesting about the situation is that when they were trying to keep the Cub fans out, it was also like, how do I say this? To me, it really was almost just kind of the Brewers saying, Brewers fans, buy more tickets. Let's get more Brewers fans to all these games. I think that they were kind of using the Cubs thing to keep visiting fans out because they don't like a hostile environment to their own city. But at the same time, I think it was also kind of their way of saying, like, let's get some more fans here because we think we got a good product here. I don't know what you think about that.
If they wanted to do it and not be shenanigans, they could do it by a hybrid of kind of what you said is jack the price up, offer it first to people with Wisconsin addresses. Be like, you guys get first service. Like, we're not going to block Cubs fans. We're just going to offer it to our fans first. And then open it up to the Cubs fans and just jack up the price. And that's, then it's like, because if you just jack up the price, period, you're going to probably have even more Cubs fans because it's discouraging Brewers fans from coming. But if you offer it up to Brewers fans, if you offer it up to Brewers fans first at the lower price, then, or even saying, oh, everybody that came to a non-Cubs game, you get first crack and you get it at this lower price, and then everybody else has to pay this higher price, and higher price for an Illinois address. Stagger it kind of like that, then maybe that helps drive more of your fans there, and then just cap, you're like, well, Cubs fans are coming anyway, we might as well just make a profit off of it. But don't make a thing of it. Don't pit, be like, Cubs fans, we're going to gouge you, we're coming, we're going to block you. It's just be like, man, we're offering it up to our fans first. You guys, welcome to our stadium, but we want our fans to come first. Like, then nobody makes us think of it. They're like, oh, well, that makes sense. I mean, even Cubs fans are going up there. They're like, well, I mean, that makes sense. I would rather have my fans get first crack at my stadium than another team's fans. And nobody makes us think. It just goes on, and it's a win-win for the Brewers.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way of putting it. And again, I try to put myself in their shoes, because if I were a Brewer fan, seeing my hometown team be a road game for every, Cubs game against the biggest rival right now, it probably sucks a lot. I mean, I try to really understand that, but, I don't think going about it the way they did, it was destined to fail. It was never going to work. It really was never going to work. And that's my whole thing is, how could you not see that it wasn't going to work? I think maybe they secretly did, and this was really just trying as an encouragement ploy, but still, like you said, you could have taken it another route, because yesterday when the Cubs rallied and they scored those runs to take the lead, that place was rocking. Absolutely rocking.
It's true. Well, I don't know if there's any. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just the last thing I was going to say is, from what I've gathered from the Brewers fan base, most Brewers fans are loyal as heck. They're not bandwagoners. They're not, fair weather. They're a group that probably are, but I think the most of the diehard Brewers fans truly are diehard Brewers fans. It's just so hard when your fan base just is not big. And I try to sympathize with that. I really do. But I also want to go and see my team on the road, not to spite anybody, not to be in the middle of some sort of big, oh, we're better than you. I just want the ability to go and see my team, few miles north. That's all I want.
It's fun. It's fun to go to another team's stadium because I love seeing other baseball stadiums, and it makes it even more fun when I get to see my team there.
It's a beautiful ballpark.
The only time I've ever been to Dodger Stadium, it was to see the Cubs.
Yeah.
And you know what? I didn't go there and hoot and holler, and I was like, oh, I'm at Dodger Stadium. This is cool. And the Cubs are playing. This is cool. And I chatted up with the Dodgers fans around me. Everybody had fun. And I honestly don't remember who won, because there was no incident afterwards. Nobody taunted. Nobody did anything. Everyone just had a good time and went home.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately there are a number of Cubs fans that can make it harder for, other teams' fan bases. But, I think it's a stereotype that can get a little too far, because Cubs-Brewers games I've been to personally, I never saw any problems or any fist fights going on. Obviously it does happen, but I feel like the stereotype does get a little far sometimes. So I'll just say that.
I don't know if you had any more topics though.
No, just ready for the home opener finally. I don't know how much of it I'll be able to see, but it's just nice knowing that they'll be playing at Wrigley Field again.
True. But I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody for listening. Please make sure you subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or the TuneIn app. Share with your friends. And thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on the plains. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears!
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.